Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's, what's it called? Zen and Zazen on Mondays, I think is the class called. And Happy New Year to everybody who's celebrating the Chinese New Year. And now we are officially in the year of the dragon. In Japan, it already started about 6 weeks ago, but that changed about 150 years ago. So thank you for those who are joining, although you are in the midst of the celebrations. Today I want to talk about Dogen Zenji's manual for Zazen, Fukan Zazengi in Japanese. But before that, as always, let's sit together for half an hour.
我们前面还是半个小时坐禅，然后后面今天讲普劝坐禅仪。
这个摩托车非要骑着，你往前走嘛。真的堵得死死。
Thank you very much for joining. So today I want to continue to talk about Dogen's manual for Zazen. Let me share the text with you. On the right side you have the classical Chinese original. I marked the passage that I want to start with today, and on the left side you have the English translation that you can also find on the website of the Antaiji monastery. So today's section starts with your conduct. Your conduct. So practice in the 24 hours of the day. Your conduct must be beyond seeing forms and hearing sounds. It must be based on the order that is prior to knowledge and views. That sounds a little bit cryptic, but in my view, basically what he's saying here, I usually say, talk about the game and taking a break from the game. And when I use this metaphor, I think I'm referring to the same that Dogen is referring here when he's talking about the order that is prior to knowledge and views, and that's beyond seeing forms and hearing sounds. So basically, from a very early age, when we are 2, 3, 4, we learn to attach names to certain things, and we kind of construct an image of the world. And then as soon as we begin to say I, me, mine, we attach ourselves to one person in that image that we build of the world. So we need to make this image of the world. We tell ourselves a story, and then out of a sudden we're one character in the story, and we compare ourselves to the others. We try to connect points. We try to be better than the others. We try to win the game. And what I always try to say is, I think, what Dogen Zenji tries to say here as well. You have to return to the point before that game started. Return to the world before you constructed an image of the world. Before there was good and bad, before there was me and the others, before I had a name, before there were males and females, before I had a nationality. You have to return to that place, and that place, of course, is here and now, this place. But even when we talk about here and now, in my case, if somebody asks me, where are you? Well, I'm in Osaka, and already I locate the here and now in a map of the world that I have. Osaka, which is in the western part of Japan. When you ask me, well, and when? Where are you right now in time? It would be February 12th. And then I locate myself in a time string. But when we do Zazen, we have to return to the point before time started, to that location before it was Japan or China or Australia or Germany, wherever you are. You have to sit in that place, in that moment that is prior to knowledge and views. And that, again, is what I usually mean when I say quit the game or take a break from the game. Okay, before I continue, maybe Xuan-san, if you like, you could translate.
我跟那个老师给的那个版本有点不一样啊，老师那个写的是繁体字，好多字儿我都有点不太认识啊。然后我在网上找了一个是简体的，就是后面那句是声色之外是威仪，和之见之前非鬼则者哉。就是其实这里面提到了一个声色之外，就是在声音和颜色之外，好像有其他的一些东西，一个能量。和之见之前非鬼则者哉， 就是好像我们要回到这些声色，或者是这些我们知道这些东西之前，呃，吴芳老师刚才回答说，其实就是他之前一直说的那个游戏，就是我们要从这个游戏当中跳出来，我们好像从我们跟这个世界有了一个连接，好像是就是对一些东西有了名字，我们知道了这个东西是什么，那个东西是什么了之后，好像对这个东西特别的有，特别的沉迷于这个名字，或者是比如说我们从小的时候2、3岁的时候，好像学习到就开始认东西，认知东西，比如说这个东西叫什么，那东西叫什么。然后我们对这个名字特别的沉浸，好像知道它这个名字这个代号好像就意味着什么，我们对这个代号好像特别的沉迷，我们就是好像不能够摆脱这个代号这个名字。比如说在我们小的时候，当我们分辨出来你和我的时候，好像它就是对你和我有一个不知道从哪儿来的一个，就是总会被它吸引。比如说我们做比较，我和你之间比较，我要比你强，或者我要比你好，或者是我更擅长，好像我们一直都想赢这个游戏。就是道元禅师在这儿其实也是想告诉我们，要从这个游戏当中退出来，回到本源，回到开始，回到有名字之前，回到好与坏之前，回到你和我之分之前，回到男女名字之前。那这个之前是哪儿呢？就是现在，就是这里。那这个现在和这里到指的是什么呢？就好像有一个人问老师说：“老师，你现在在哪儿？”老师说：“我现在在大阪。”那现在是什么时间？他可能告诉你，现在是2024年2月12日，然后我现在在大阪。好像当他很明确的跟你说了一个时间和名字的时候，当他告诉你明确这些代号的时候，我们好像就已经被这个代号、被这个名字、被你所说的这个时间和地点所困住了。好像我们对这个时间和地点特别的沉迷于这个时间和地点。我们坐禅呢，其实就是让你坐下来，回到时间之前，回到本源之前，回到时间开始的时候，回到我们不知道你在哪儿的时候，我们坐下来，回到那个时候，从这个游戏当中退出来。这就是道元禅师想要提醒我们的地方。
Okay, thank you. Let's continue for a couple of sentences. The next one. Don't worry about if you are more intelligent than the others or not. Make no distinction between the dull and the sharp-witted. Words like this you sometimes hear in Zen, also in the sutras. Sometimes you hear this kind of admonition, because probably it was the same in medieval Christian monasteries. The monks were those who were able to read and write, while many ordinary people couldn't read and write. They were studying the books, and also science was something that was done inside the monasteries. So probably a lot of the monks were quite intelligent. But in Zen, it's not about intellectual understanding. So in Zen, if you are not as sharp-witted as the others, and maybe not as intelligent as the others, it's really not so important, because it's not about understanding the Dharma, it's about practicing the Dharma, it's becoming one with the thing. It's not about understanding what the here and now is. It doesn't mean to have an intellectual grasp about the order that is prior to knowledge and views. Rather, it means to, well, just return here in this moment to what you're doing. So often, actually, Zen practice can be easier for somebody who's not too intelligent, because when you're intelligent, the temptation to always, well, try to find the meaning and express it in words is much bigger than if you're not as sharp-witted. If you concentrate your effort single-mindedly, and that in the Chinese would be these 4 characters. In Japanese, you would read them Sen Ichi Kufu. Kufu is a word that you hear quite often in Japanese, but I find it kind of difficult to translate into English. Here it's translated as concentrate your effort, which isn't a bad translation. But for example, sometimes in Antaiji, when I was the cook, I would get the feedback that a little kufu was missing. So the meal that I cooked was okay, but my Dharma brothers had the idea that some kufu was missing. And what they tried to say, I think, was less that I should have done, well, more, or that I should have worked harder, although that's also part of the meaning. But I'd the feeling that most of the time they meant that there was just a little, some extra missing, some kind of, also kind of experimental spirit. For example, in Japan and maybe also in China, what you eat depends very much on the season. So there's certain things yet that you would only eat in February, for example, or in March. In February, actually in Antaiji, because of the snow, you eat only the old stuff that you harvested in the autumn. But then in March, there's, for example, if you go to the mountains, there's some wild leaves, ferns that grow. And kufu can mean to, well, look around. What is there today that wasn't here yesterday? Maybe there's some kind of leaf that I can pick and serve extra. Just this kind of a certain idea, a certain kind of freshness also in your perception, I think is also meant by kufu. So it doesn't only mean to do your best. That's also implied in this word, but it means to be open and fresh and have ideas. If you concentrate your effort single-mindedly, that in itself is wholeheartedly engaging the way. And engaging the way is bendo, though some of you probably know bendo wa is a famous text by Dogen. These two words are also the first two characters in bendo wa. Practice realization is naturally undefiled, and when Dogen Zenji uses this phrase, he also uses the same phrase in the Bendo wa. Practice and realization is undefiled means we don't practice today to get enlightened tomorrow. If we had this idea in mind, then we would defile practice and realization. We would turn practice into a tool for something else. But that they are undefiled for Dogen means they are one. You can't separate them. You don't, well, in the case of work, for example, you work to earn money. In the case of study, you study to get a job. But for Dogen, that would mean that your work is defiled. You don't work because it fulfills you. You don't work because you want to serve people. You work for money. You don't study because you're interested in the subject. You study to get good grades, to get a job. That would be defiled study. And practice realization is undefiled, means nothing goes between these two. You don't practice to get realization or enlightenment, but practice is realization of enlightenment. Practicing the way means to live the present day. That's a little free translation. Basically, well, but it's not a wrong translation. Basically, it means your focus, your intention, the direction of your practice is daily life. I think it was Nansen and Joshu. Joshu asked his teacher Nansen, what is the way? And Nansen answered, daily mind or ordinary mind. Ordinary mind is the way. And ordinary mind, the ordinary is also something that appears here. what I translated as the present day. You could also say kind of ordinary life. So the practice of the way takes place in our ordinary lives, here and now. And then I think Joshua asked his teacher, well, where can I find this ordinary mind? And Nansen says something like, the moment you try to grasp it, it's not ordinary mind anymore. But okay, so much from my side for today. Maybe Shwansan, you can translate, and after that, if you have questions or anything you would like to share, please do so.
老师后面又读了一句，后面是然则不论上至下愚，就是好像我先读完啊，莫简利人顿者专一功夫，正是半道也。修正自不染污，去向更是平常物也。他前面说了一个然则不论上至下愚，就是其实在很多的经文里面都提到过，好像就是以前有一些和尚好像确实是有天赋的，他的悟性很强，他可能就是参禅论道非常有悟性，很快就能够到达，就能够入定，或者是很快就能够参悟。然后我们一些凡夫呢，可能连读书写字都不会，好像很愚笨，就是不论上至下愚，莫简利人钝者，就是其实越简单的人，越愚钝的人呢，反而不见得是一件坏事情。因为在禅修当中，其实没有什么天才，或者是没有什么悟性高，这些都不重要，因为就是我们说的 Dharma，就是中文翻译成业哈，就是你这个业其实不需要你明白和不明白，你应该做的是练习，应该是做，应该是练习，而不是需要你明白它。你明不明白其实都不重要，你重要的是应该练习，应该做。就是你要练习，就是你要回到现在，回到我们现在这个时刻，回到本源。好像不是说天才就更好，因为天才可能一直想的是要如何明白，他没有练习的话，其实不见得是件好事情。我们坐禅其实不是为了明白什么，而是为了不是为了明白什么，不是为了找到它的意义，而是要练习。后面老师提到了专一功夫，然后刚刚老师提到功夫这两个词，其实中文和日语里面的功夫这个词呢，有点就很相似啊。专一功夫就好像更愚笨的人，好像他更加的花时间、花功夫、花精力去办一件事情。在日本呢，就是比如说做饭的时候，有的时候那个师傅会说啊，你现在做好了没有？然后师傅还说啊，还好像还差点功夫。他这个差点功夫其实有很多含义，比如说他不是说你的技术高低，对不对？也不是说好像做没做好，就是好像还差点功夫，就还差点时间，还差点精力，还差点火候。不是说这个饭做的你的技术好不好，对不对？我们说做饭的时候，或者说比如说像中国或者日本呢，我们在吃东西上面都有一个遵循规律和，比如说我们喜欢吃应季的食物。你像安泰寺2月的时候呢，可能因为他们不能够出山，他们吃的都一些囤起来的食物，比如土豆啊什么的，就是之前的老的一些能够囤下来的食物。而到3月的时候呢，就可以上山去采菜了。那他们去山上摘菜的时候呢，就要看当天能够摘到什么，当天有什么，然后他们就会吃什么。当天有什么，也就是说你要花点时间或者是功夫，看看现在有什么，而不是说要挑最好的，或者是要挑更好的。其实就是这个含义，就是说让你要有一个开阔的思维，并不是说你要多么的聪明。然后后面他又提到了一个，日语是变道啊，中文他写的是专一功夫，正是半道，中文写的是半道，它是半道也。那个半道，其实道元禅师有一个经文叫变道化，就是日语里面特别有名儿。他其实也说了这句话，就是好像我们今天的练习，并不是为了明天的悟道。就好像它这个是不能够分开的，练习和悟道应该是在一起的。一边练，其实练习就是已经入定，或者我们说到达三摩地哈， 那个瑜伽里面，就是我们今天练习不是为了明天能够入定，就好像它是不能分开的，就好像我们工作。我们有的时候工作是为了挣钱，学习是为了找了工作。其实，在道元禅师的很多经文里面讲到了，工作和钱中间是没有什么隔阂的，就是你的工作和钱之间没有什么关系，它中间是没有什么东西在中间的。学习和工作当中也没有什么间隔和东西，就是工作就是工作，然后挣钱是挣钱，学习是学习。如果你工作是为了挣钱的话，那你就失去了现在的工作。如果你学习是为了工作的话，那你就失去了现在正在学习。所以练习呢，就是入定。当你练习的时候就已入定，而今天的练习不是为了明天。就好像我们要专一功夫啊，正是办道也，就是这个意思。就是我们要专注于练习，专注于功夫这件事情。这个功夫没有什么天赋，也没有什么时间哈，它就是。这和中文那个含义是一样的，要花些功夫，你要专注于这个功夫，就好像那什么是专注于功夫呢？就好像赵州一个赵州和尚，他问他的师傅说：“老师，那我们说我们要禅修哈，我们要修正道，那哪里是正道呢？”他的老师告诉他说：“日常生活就是正道，你原来的思维、原来的意识、本源的大脑，你本源的思维。”本心，或者是我们说的原来的心，就是正道。也就是说，我们其实都是为了回到原来的生活，回到本源的生活，回到你原来，回到现在，回到这个时刻，回到你本来的一个思维，原来的思维和原来的生活当中，大概是这个意思啊。
Thank you.
Very.
Do you have any questions? Anything you would like to share? If yes,
Uh,
do so.
yes, if you allow, I wanted to ask a question.
Yes, please.
In your today's lecture, you were mentioning one thing that was that you can map a lot across the book to you and some other Buddhist books. So this has been formulated like the point beyond good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite often referred like that. So in most of the religions, like good and evil are defined like very particular things. I mean, that give the person in his everyday life a certain roadmap of the things you should do and the things you should not do. So meanwhile, they have a metaphysical meaning. They have a very exact daily life application. But in Zen, we often see this mention of the point from before you were born, or beyond good and evil. So applying to the good and evil, what is Zen take on these two things, good and evil, which have so down to earth and everyday application other religions, like certain things you should do, certain things you should not do. But I see that Zen has some other point of view on that when he's speaking about the point beyond good and evil. So Zen does not actually define things you should do or you should not do. It takes some other approach to the questions of morality, questions of good and evil, as people generally understand these things.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, as you mentioned, and as I said today, often it's said in Zen that you should transcend good and evil, or in the Fukan Zazengi, in an earlier passage of the text, he says, don't think about good, don't think about evil. But then, on the other hand, in Buddhism, as in other religions, you have precepts. And when we take refuge, for example, when I ordained in Antaiji, which is a Zen temple, I ordained as a Zen monk. The first three precepts are basically refrain from everything that's bad and practice what is good. So there's a contradiction there. We take the same precepts as all the other Buddhist monks that mean we're not supposed to do things that are against the precepts, and we are supposed to do things that are, how do you say, well, good or that help others, things that are helpful. But then on the other side, what you just said, forget about good and evil. Return to the point before they were two. And now one could ask oneself, well, that sounds like a contradiction there. On the one hand, you're supposed to do good and stay away from the evil. On the other hand, you're supposed to transcend the two. And it would be nice. It would be nice if, for example, you could resolve that contradiction. And for example, say, when you transcend good and evil, then naturally you will be a good person, a bodhisattva. So once you get enlightened, you don't need the precepts anymore. But I have the feeling that you somehow have to accept this contradiction. So I have the feeling there's no way around both somehow a certain set of rules, some kind of ethical standards. On the other hand, this admonition, don't get too attached to these ethical standards, to the rules. So taking a break from the game, the metaphor that I always use also means taking a break from ethics, taking a break from keeping to the precepts. But then that's also what I didn't say today, but I say from time to time. After you take a break from the game, you return to the game. You play again, but you play more playful. So it sometimes happens with, for example, ethics or rules, whatever, that in a very subtle way we try to collect points by keeping to the precepts. So I do good because I want others to see how good I am. I do good because in my game, that's how you collect points. See how much I donated for other people. See how much food I gave to homeless people. See whatever I did. And when people play that game, most of the time they don't even realize that they are playing that game, and they're playing it more or less in the same way that other people try to impress other people by wearing fashionable clothes or driving a fast car. They do it with different means, but it's not something that comes from their heart. So I think in Zen, this admonition, forget about good and bad, forget it all, means forget about the points. And then when you do good, of course it's good to do good, but do it because you want so. And if you don't do bad, and you shouldn't do bad, but don't do it because people will think bad about me, or I'm a Buddhist monk, so I'm not supposed to do bad, so I don't do it. But don't do bad because you realize you don't want to do it. Don't do bad because you don't want to do bad, and not because in your mind you think, oh, this is good, I do it, this is bad, I don't do it. But take a break from that game, and then when you return to the game, play it more playful. It should come from your heart. I think that's why they often say during Zazen, forget about good and bad, forget about it all. Stop being a bodhisattva. But then when you return from Zazen, you get off the cushion. Of course, you should also remind yourself that you're also a bodhisattva, that you also want to help people. It's not only about yourself. But at least from my point of view, I think there's really no, how do you say, good way to solve this contradiction. But then at the end of the day, I'm happy to live with that contradiction. To, on the one hand, have ethical standards, have rules, on the other hand, allow myself to take a break from that. Thank you for the question. Julian has raised his hands. Julian, please.
Yeah, and also just to say, in taking a break from the game and returning to awareness, we just always move away, even just for a moment, from the I'm right and you're wrong. And so there is a kind of a nice link, between the practice of Zazen and good behavior, I think, just moving away from that moment. So, but we always have to live with contradiction.
Yeah, I mean that's another problem with good and bad. That's when there's nothing bad with doing good. Of course, it's good when we do good, but then it's we are the good ones and those are the baddies, and that's where the fight starts. So when you stop being good, there's also no reason to fight anymore. It's only because you think you're good, but the others are not as good as you that the fight starts. So that's another reason to forget about good and bad. But Josh is raising his hand. Josh, please.
Hi. I'm wondering about finding teachers. So I'm living in London, and there are no good Zen teachers in London. So
you checked them all out.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know a good teacher in London as well. I mean, it's a big city. It's a big city. I don't know, Julian or Joseph. You're from Great Britain. Do you know any teachers in England or
That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here, Muho, with you on a Monday.
there are no good teachers in the whole UK.
I don't know. It's hard to know, isn't it? But it's also about personality and character, isn't it? Sometimes about that sense of a.
I can recommend some in Edinburgh if you don't mind.
In Edinburgh,
and, getting the train up here. So
I may as well go to Osaka if I'm going to go to Edinburgh.
yeah. But, yeah. So I think. I mean, I don't know.
Just to follow on that,
I don't know who you've
who I've looked at in London.
Oh, well, all I was going to say, I was going to share my opinion, but I don't know who you've met in London or wherever. But
yeah.
I think sometimes you don't need to find like the exact perfect teacher.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can just be someone who you kind of trust and get a generally good vibe from, and you start going and build a relationship with them. It doesn't necessarily need to be a search for a perfect teacher, in my opinion, anyway. But yeah,
I'm a perfectionist. So Muho, to follow on that question, if I'm not able to find a good teacher, how important is this at my stage of the practice? I've been practicing for 7-8 years.
Yes.
I read a lot of texts. It says, oh, you must find a good teacher. A lot of good Dharma teachers today across traditions talk about finding a teacher. I think even you have spoken about finding a teacher. Yes. So what do I do to solve this?
Well, if you think you need a teacher, probably, you need one. So, I mean, if you practice only to develop more mindfulness, to calm down at the end of the day or something like that, you don't necessarily need a teacher. But if you really are quite serious about this and want to really let go of everything, having a teacher is a good idea. But as Joseph said, it doesn't have to be a perfect teacher, because there are no perfect teachers out there. My teacher, I had great respect for my teacher, but he wasn't perfect in no way. And Uchiyama, who was the teacher of my teacher's teacher, so 3 generations ago, he was a student of Sawaki Roshi, who was very famous. But even Uchiyama said, no teacher will be perfect. So it's more about, how much am I willing to learn from this person? I know this person isn't perfect. I can find many faults. So it's a little bit like being in a marriage. At first you're in love and you think, that person, he's perfect, she's perfect. But then after 2 or 3 years, you realize even that person that I fell in love with and I thought he or she is perfect, they are not perfect. But then the question is, how can I live and live in the most happy marriage possible with this person that isn't perfect, and you yourself also being not perfect. It's a little bit like that in the student-teacher relationship. So I would say, well, find the best person you can find. Be aware they're not perfect. Ideally, they are also themselves aware that they are not perfect. The most dangerous teacher is one who thinks I'm perfect and who convinces you also that they are perfect. That's kind of where cult starts. You think the teacher is perfect, the teacher himself thinks they're perfect, and that's goes down from there. That's dangerous. But if you're quite aware, oh, that's not a perfect teacher, but he seems to be a genuine person, and they themselves are also aware of their imperfections. That's quite good. That's a good point to start, I would say. That's a good point to start.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph and Julie as well. Thank you.
Anything else you would like to ask or share? Yes, Google Pixel 7 Pro, please. You're still mute. You would have to unmute yourself.
Laut schalten.
Yes,
Ist es
now it's okay.
Jetzt ist okay. Okay. Ja, also Bamberg, Mahlzeit. Ich habe eine ganz einfache praktische Frage. Kannst du mir diese Kalligraphie vom Edurum Roshi übersetzen? Was das heißt? Ich habe das schon vor so vielen Jahren bekommen. Ich wollte es jetzt verschenken, aber ich weiß nicht mehr, was draufsteht.
Kannst du es ein bisschen höher halten? Shoshin, Shoshin. Okay. So he wants a translation of these two characters. Shoshin means, well, right mind, right mind. So the top character is for kind of true or right. And the one below is the character for mind or heart. A true heart, a true mind.
Okay, das war schon meine Frage. Okay. Danke. Schöne Grüße nach Osaka aus Bamberg.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Anything else you would like to ask or share? Tanja, please.
Ja, Grüße nach Bamberg aus Herzogenaurach bei Erlangen, gleich um die Ecke hier gefühlt. Ja. Okay, is it Soshin like heart mind on this character? Or is it a different...
The shin can mean both heart or mind, yes.
Because I know this Irish young woman, this Maura Soshin O'Halloran, and I read her book recently. So I thought maybe this is the Dharma name of her, on the calligraphy. Is it the same or something different? You know Soshin, you know her, Muho?
No.
Irish young lady who died in a car accident, aged 27, and had Dharma transmission. I forgot the temple name. She came to Japan and she stayed about 3 or 4 years in this temple, and then she wanted to go back to Ireland and had her own Zen group, and she died on a bus accident in Thailand on her way home. And her memoirs, diary, was published. It was in the 80s, I think. So I thought you might know her because a bit older than you.
No,
and she's called Soshin like heart mind. Maura Soshin O'Halloran.
Like with Dharma names, if it's a Japanese Dharma name, both Sho and Shin can mean many things. There's many characters that are pronounced Sho, and also very many different characters which are pronounced Shin. Like, for example, the character for faith or belief is also Shin. So Sho Shin can also mean true belief. Could mean a lot of things.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything else? If not, I wish you... What is the name of the lady? She sounds interesting. You know the second name, the family name? Shoshin is the Dharma name?
Oh, she sent a message. We got it.
Okay.
I see. Thank you. It's
Okay.
more Maura. So okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for joining. I wish you a nice Chinese New Year's holiday if you celebrate them. And if you like, see you again. Next Monday, we return to Sawaki Roshi's quotes to you. And in 2 weeks, we get back to the Fukanza Zengi text. So,
I just,
yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to tell you a personal thank you. Just, I've been reading this book. I started to read like 15 years ago in
Yes.
Russian. It was a translation from, the German, from your translation from Japanese, I suppose. And
Yes.
it just, I'm just really glad that you organize these meetings, and it's really honor for me to meet you, the person who actually did that amazing job. And I want to say that I'm really thankful to you for that work that you did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for joining. Have a nice week. And if you like, see you again next Monday, same time, same address. And thank you to Xuan for hosting us here and translating to Chinese.
Thank you, everyone.
See you again.